When we analyze art beyond the West, we have to assume we won't be able to apply Western standards of beauty. So we have to figure out then, well, what can we do to be able to come to an understanding or a proper appreciation of non-Western art or art beyond the West? The only way really to do that is by studying the culture and trying to get as close to an understanding of it from the inside as possible, because it's only then that we're going to be able to understand the cultural values that produce the aesthetics, the ideas of what is beautiful within that society. The question I think I also have to ask is, can we actually fully do that? Can we really understand another culture completely? And you may disagree with me, but I'm going to say we probably can't get 100% of an understanding of a different culture, but we can get as close as possible. And that's what we're going to try and do in this course this semester. And we're going to try and learn to appreciate the works of art from the eyes of the people who made them and were intended to appreciate them. So let's start with these two examples. This is just a sample. We're gonna try a couple things before we begin our course content to get a little bit of a flavor of how we're going to view these objects throughout the course. Both of these are female figures, reasonably nude female figures that are seated. And yet, when we look at them, they are very, very different at the same time. And the reason for that is they're coming from two different aesthetic systems. So let's take a look at the one on the left. And by the way, we're going to return to both of these in the course and take a look at them later. The one that's on the left is African. It comes from Mali, and it is an image, I think, as you look at it, either as an artist or as a critic, I think you can tell that it's a good work of art. It's a pretty impressive and sophisticated work of art. It is symmetrical. It's also upright. It engages in the use of pretty sophisticated negative space. And by that, I'm talking about the space around the inside of the arm and also around the extensions that come down from the headdress of the figure, echoing some of the shapes and forms found in the rest of the piece of sculpture. There are, in fact, repeated curving forms that exist here. The breasts, for one, simplified, abstracted, tend to echo the curving line of the headdress, tend to echo the belly, and also come down and I think echo the lines of the legs as well. And they are picked up, I also believe, in the continuous curves of the arms. So this is a figure created with a number of repeated curving forms, as well as some angular ones. You can see an angular shape on the belly of the figure that is also picked up in the shoulders and I think in the triangular shape of the arms. So a pretty sophisticated design overall that tends to also incorporate the negative space into the figure. The figure also has a very elongated neck, and anytime we have a figure like that, it introduces an element of elegance. So, what can we say about the way we believe this figure was actually used in the culture that produced it? We have knowledge that it was used in rites of passage. We have also knowledge that it was used in rituals that were associated with childbearing. What makes it successful in those rituals is that it embodies the ideals and behaviors of the people who created it. For them, this would have been considered aesthetically good, a good work of art. By that I mean one that is pleasing or beautiful, but at the same time, one that also conveys and suggests to the viewer ideals of behavior. This African piece of art is an object that was used ritually One of its purposes was to reflect and honor the woman whose image is depicted by showing her as an ideal role model. Okay, so what makes this figure convey ideals of behavior that are worthy of following? I guess the first question I would ask is this a strong woman? And I think that the answer absolutely is yes. She's sitting with great strength in an upright position. She's also fairly symmetrical, and symmetry adds formality and it often adds strength to a work of art. The figure also is a figure that has her feet firmly planted on the ground, adding a sense of connection to earth and a sense of strength. In addition to that, you have to ask about the mood of the piece. Both the pose and the expression on the face suggest that the figure is calm and composed. All of this together adds to concepts of beauty and value for the people that produce this. This is an image of a woman very much in control. She represents order and harmony and balance, composure and strength. These are qualities of a perfect individual's behavior. Someone who functions in the community with control, with moderation, and literally living an upright life, being a strong, and in this case, we can assume this woman is also pregnant, being a strong and reproductive mother, adding to the welfare and the benefit of society. So her posture, her upright pose, her controlled expression, all of this add to qualities of perfection of her character, which also would be a part of what would be viewed to be aesthetically pleasing in the art. In contrast, the piece that is on the right comes from India, and it is Hindu. We will look at this one as we get into the course also. The figure is leaning to one side, and I think we can refer to it as asymmetrical. It's also a very sensual figure or sensuous figure, very, very curving. It is a fully endowed human form, and the forms of the woman are swelling, they're rounded. Our pose of the person is seated on a lotus throne, which we'll discuss later. It is a throne in a position that was easily understood by Hindus as being royal ease. It's the pose that someone of royalty would take or someone divine would take. The figure is calm and relaxed, yet at the same time, absolutely filled with vital energy. This individual, her name is Parvati. Parvati is the goddess of love and of fertility, and she is the consort of the great god Shiva, as we'll see shortly in our course. She is associated then in her role with sensuality and with cosmic power. In Hinduism, also, individuals, that would be you and me, are seeking union with the divine ultimately. And one way of expressing that is with a parallel between human and divine spiritual union and human physical or sensual union. That plus the notion of constant cycles of rebirth and renewed energy for people being born again in Hinduism brings a kind of energy and pulsing vigor into this depiction of Parvati. She then embodies the ideas of Hinduism. Even her asymmetrical pose seems to suggest the nature of constant flux and change that takes place in Hindu beliefs in terms of the continuous cycles of renewal and rebirth.